Hello everyone, welcome to Unacademy's Let's Crack UPSC CSE English YouTube channel. Now the topic that we'll be looking today is current affairs. Now this series is an ongoing series on current affairs which is very important for UPSC prelims examination. Now these current affairs videos that I'll be doing, topics that I'll be covering in those videos is very important from the perspective of the upcoming UPSC prelims. So if you wish to follow my videos regularly, do subscribe to Unacademy's YouTube channel and don't forget to click the notification icon. Now, before going on to the video itself, let me give you a brief introduction about myself. See, my name is Aravind. I have completed my B Mechanical Engineering in 2014 and I have almost 3 years of experience in teaching UPSC Civil Services and I've experienced all stages of UPSC Civil Services. My specialization subjects include polity, international relations, and lastly, current affairs. So, I'll be teaching current affairs in this particular class. Now, what are the advantages that you will get by subscribing to Unacademy? See, Unacademy is the largest online learning platform in India. So, being Unacademy being the largest online platform in India itself provides you with a lot of advantage. One main advantage is it gives you access to top educators' videos. See, if you are going to an offline institutions, what happens is that if you will go to a particular institution and you will get to learn a particular subject only from one teacher who is assigned by that particular institute. Yeah, if you want to learn geography, you can learn geography only from one teacher who is assigned by that particular institute. But in case of Unacademy, it congregates all top educators from all over India, and these top educators from all over India they get to share their knowledge with number of students. So that's the main advantage with Unacademy. Now, top educators like Sudarshan Gujar, Munal Patel, Ayush Sangi. So these are top educators in UPSC field for the past few years, and you get to learn from these people. Not only that, you get access to daily live classes from top educators. In these daily live classes, you can comment on them, you can ask doubts if you like. All these things you can do in these daily live classes, and if you wish to watch these live classes again, you can do so. But in offline classes, you cannot do so. But in Unacademy platform, since it's an online platform, if you want to watch these videos again, you can do so. And then the almost all classes in Unacademy are structured in nature, so the learning process becomes very easy, and you have unlimited access to all videos by all educators in Unacademy platform. For example, if you are subscribing to UPSC examination, you get access to all videos concerned with UPSC examination. So these are the advantages with respect to subscribing to Unacademy. Now, based on students' request, Unacademy recently have introduced a new type of platform called as Iconic Subscription Platform. So, Unacademy right now provides you with two types of subscription. One is Plus, another one is Iconic. Now, what's the difference between Plus and Iconic? See, in case of Plus subscription, here, as I mentioned before, all top educators from all over India they will come together in a single platform and they will share their knowledge with you. That's Plus platform. It's all about teaching. But in case of Iconic platform, see, UPSC preparation is a very laborious process. You have to prepare for almost 1 to 2 years constantly, and you require constant guidance so that your preparation is not going in a wrong direction. Now, this constant guidance will be provided by an experienced mentor who will be personally assigned to you by Unacademy. See, Unacademy will personally assign you with a mentor. Now, that mentor has a lot of experience in UPSC field. Not only that, some may have even cleared UPSC itself. These mentors get to guide you with respect to UPSC preparation. Yeah. Especially through all stages of UPSC preparation, that is prelims, mains, as well as interview. Now, that is a very exciting prospect. So, how is Iconic different from Plus? As I mentioned before, teaching is all about knowledge. See that your knowledge is all about sharing. That sharing process happens in Plus platform. But whereas in case of mentoring is all about experience, so the experience will be shared by the Unacademy educator to you. Now that platform will be provided under Iconic platform. So Iconic includes not only teaching but it also includes mentoring as well. Yeah. So Unacademy Plus involves lessons on subjects, including a detailed lesson plan, methods of assessment, all these things. Whereas in case of Unacademy Coach, he will provide you with practical insight on how to apply knowledge in practice. See, one of the difficult things with respect to UPSC is, in case of UPSC, a person can easily acquire knowledge. Clear. Knowledge acquiring is only 50 percentage, but how you apply this knowledge in practical sense, that is in exam perspective, is next 50 percentage. Clear. You might have heard the phrase from a number of educators like prelims is not just hard work, it is also about smart work. 50 percentage is hard work and 50 percentage is smart work. Now this smart work parts come from mentoring. Okay. Now that will be provided by an Academy Iconic platform. Now, if you wish to subscribe to Iconic platform, you can do so via, in your subscription page. You will be provided with two options. One is for Plus platform, and another one is for Iconic platform. Now, if you wish to subscribe for Iconic platform, just click on that Iconic platform and then click Continue with Iconic. And the amount charged for Iconic platform will be a little bit higher compared to Plus platform. And lastly, look here. These are the amounts. These are the amounts charged by Unacademy for UPSC platform. This is very less compared to other traditional institutions. Not only that, if you are using my code Aravind V, you get 10% offer as well. If you apart from the paltry sum that Unacademy is charging you, if you're using my code Aravind V, you get 10% offer as well. So if you are subscribing to say like 12 months, you'll be paying around 36,000 rupees. So if you're using my code Aravind V, you get 3,600 rupees as offer. So instead of paying 36,000 rupees, you'll be paying around 32,400. So don't forget to use my code Aravind V whenever you're subscribing to Plus platform. Now, moving on to the topics itself. Now, the topics that we'll be looking today is One Nation, One Ration Card Scheme. The next one is uh, Standing Committee Report on Financial Tech Sector, Mukurti National Parks. So these are some of the topics that we'll be looking today. Now these topics we will analyze in depth what these topics means. All these things we will look into that, because one of the main most important things when it comes to UPSC preparation is preparing in depth, because every day you will learn about new topics in UPSC. So all this information you have to remember, right? Now, if you're just skimming, if you're just reading the parts, if you're reading the portion of UPSC, remembering all this information becomes very, very difficult. Yeah. So to remember stuff, you should not just read stuff, you should analyze in depth with respect to each and every topic. Only if you're studying in depth with respect to each and every topic, remembering stuff in UPSC becomes much easier. Clear? This is very important. Yeah, whenever you're reading about a topic, you have to analyze what, why, as well as where. Without analyzing these three things, remembering information in UPSC examination is very difficult. Now let's move on to the first topic of today. Now the first topic that we will be looking today is One Nation, One Ration Card Scheme. Okay. Now this is the first topic that we will be looking today. Now, why is this particular scheme was introduced? Excuse me. See here, this scheme is all about interstate portability of ration cards. Now, what do you mean by this interstate portability of ration cards? Now, I'll give an example. Say, for example, this person A, is residing in the state of Orissa. Now, this person A belongs to a family which is below poverty line. This person A comes from the family which is below poverty line, and they are residing in the state of Orissa. Now, for employment opportunities, this A is moving to another state, Kerala. This A is moving to another state, Kerala. Now, in Orissa, he has a ration card. In Orissa, he has a ration card. Now, using this ration card, he is getting subsidized benefits, especially with respect to public distribution system, in Orissa. Using this ration card, he can get cheap food grains from public distribution system. Now, currently, before June 2020, person A cannot use this ration card in Kerala. He can use this ration card only in Orissa. Now, because of this problem, this person A, even though he has migrated to Kerala, he was unable to get subsidized food grains from PDS. Yeah. Now, to solve this problem, especially in recent years, number of internal migrants. What is the meaning of internal migration? People who are moving within state to state, especially people who are below the poverty line, internal migration, people who are migrating from states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar to southern states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka is increasing day by day. Now, because of this problem, because of not having this one nation, one ration card scheme, number of migrants, even though they come under below poverty line, they could not get access to benefits like public distribution system. So to solve this problem, this one nation, one ration card scheme was introduced. Now by this scheme, it doesn't matter where A is residing. This person A can receive subsidized food grains from any PDS shop from all over India. Okay, so that's the gist of this particular scheme. Also, this enables beneficiaries who are taking food grains under PDS system to access the same benefits if they happen to migrate to one part of the country to another in a seamless manner. Okay. Now, this is how one nation, one ration card scheme operates. Now, what is this public distribution system? See, public distribution system is an Indian food security system established under Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution, which comes under Department of Food and Public Distribution. Now, this information is very important because people will think that since PDS is related to agriculture, it will come under Ministry of Agriculture. It's clearly wrong. The PDS system will come under Ministry of Consumer Affairs, not under Ministry of Agriculture. Also, not under Ministry of Finance. Now, PDS is operated under the joint responsibility of central as well as state governments. Okay, the term PDS right now is the joint responsibility of both central government as well as state government. And then now, what is the responsibility of state government? Now, central government with the help of Food Corporation of India, they have assumed the responsibility of procurement, storage, transportation, as well as bulk allocation for individual states concerned. Okay. What is the job of central government in public distribution system? They will, through FCI, they will procure food grains, they will store these food grains, they will transport these food grains to particular states, and they will allocate these food grains within state themselves. Okay, so this is the job of central government. Now, what is the job of state government? Now, the operational responsibilities of state government includes allocation within state. Yeah. So after they receive the food grains from all over from central government, state government will get to decide how this food grain will be allocated between number of ration shops, and then they will identify which families are eligible for subsidized food grains under PDS, and they will issue ration cards, and then they will supervise the functioning of fair price shops. Okay, so on not only that, all the other functions under the PDS system will rest with state government. Yeah. So it's like division of lists under state between state government and state government. How under schedule list we are dividing the number of lists into central list, state list, and concurrent list. Similarly, within PDS we are dividing responsibilities between central government and state government. Central government is given with only with these functions, and all the other functions are given to state government. And most important functions include allocations within the particular state, identification of eligible families, issuance of ration cards, and then supervision of fair price shops. Okay. Now, moving on, in June 1997, Government of India launched launched a scheme called as Targeted Public Distribution System, which focus on the poor. See, even though any people can get subsidized food grains from public distribution system, under this public distribution system, they introduced a new kind of scheme called as Targeted Public Distribution System. What is the purpose of this TPDS? This TPDS will give food grains to poor people, that is below poverty line people, at a even more subsidized rates. Okay, so even though public distribution systems gives food grains at a subsidized rate, it will give food grains for below poverty line people at a even more subsidized prices. Now, under targeted public distribution system, beneficiaries were divided into two categories. Those two categories under targeted public distribution system, beneficiaries were divided into two categories. One is below poverty line families, and the next one is above poverty line families. Clear? And also to make targeted the targeted public distribution system more focused and targeted towards the poorest segment of BPL population, the Antodaya Anna Yojana was launched in December of 2000. See here, even though in India there are a number of poor people, there are certain families who are extremely poor. Now, to target these extremely poor households who are very vulnerable to social factors, a scheme called as Antodaya Anna Yojana was launched in December of 2000. And apart from that, recently, not recently, for a few years back, this new type of scheme was passed called as National Food Security Act. This was passed in 2013. Now, this act largely relies on existing targeted public distribution system to deliver food grains as legal entitlements to poor households. Now, this particular scheme, this particular act, National Food Security Act, is very important when it comes to PDS because before 2013, PDS was seen as a welfare program. PDS was seen as a welfare program. Now, what is the meaning of welfare program? Government, based on its benign personality, they are giving this subsidized food grains. So it is up to government whether to give the subsidized food grains or not. So if the government decides that these subsidized food grains are not necessary, they can remove this TDPS. But after 2013, access to PDS food grains became right, which means that government has to compulsorily provide subsidized food grains for to each and every household in India. Clear? Access to food grains became a right. It's not just a welfare program. Yeah. It became legal right, not constitutional right. It became legal right. I do hope you know the differences between legal right. There are two types of rights in India. One is legal right. Another one is constitutional right, and then fundamental rights. Clear. So if legal rights are getting challenged, you can challenge only in high court. In case of constitutional rights, so you can challenge only in high court. But in case of fundamental rights, you can directly approach either Supreme Court or High Court. Clear. And the number of rights that are guaranteed under fundamental rights, sorry, the amount of protection given to fundamental rights is much more rigorous compared to legal right as well as constitutional right. I hope this division is very clear to you. Now let's take a look at what are the provisions under National Food Security Act. Now, the enactment of National Food Security Act on the 5th of July 2013 marked a paradigm shift in approach to food security from welfare to rights-based approach. Clear? Now, this act legally entitled up to 75% of rural population and 50% of urban population to receive subsidized food grains under targeted public distribution system. So around 66% of Indian households are entitled to receive subsidized food grains from public distribution system. Okay, and it made it a legal right. So government has to compulsorily provide this amount of food grains to poorest of poor households. Clear? Now we will move on to the next topic of today. Now the next topic that we'll be looking today is sorry. Now the next topic that we'll be looking today is Jan Suchna Portal. Now this Jan Suchna Portal was launched by Rajasthan government in 2019. Now which department under Rajasthan government launched this particular scheme? It was Department of Information Technology. See, this Department of Information Technology under Rajasthan government launched Jan Suchna portal. Now, what is the purpose of this Jan Suchna portal? So, this Jan Suchna portal will actively disseminate disseminate information regarding public offices to public. Clear, this portal aims to provide information to public about government authorities and departments, empowering them with access to useful information. So it is this particular scheme is a way of enhancing provisions under RTI Act. Now, what is RTI Act? As I mentioned in my last video, this is government authorities, government institutions. There will be a lot of information with these government authorities, like information regarding the construction of roads, number of infrastructure projects. All this information will be with government authorities. Now, before passing of RTI Act, getting access to this particular information was very difficult. Yeah, getting access to this government information was very difficult. But after the introduction of RTI Act, public public by means of addressing to public information officer by addressing to public information officer via letter, public by addressing to public information officer via letter, they can ask for any type of documents which is kept in the possession of any government agency. Okay? And this government agency has to provide this information within 30 days of receipt of this particular letter. So within 30 days they have to give this particular information. So that's the purpose of RTA. Now this is a passive process. What is the meaning of passive process? Here the public has to file a letter. Only after recipients of this letter, government agency will disseminate this particular information. But in case of active dissemination of information, even before the letter is being received, they will disseminate this information. They will put out this information in public domain. Clear? So that's the difference between passive dissemination and active dissemination. Now this portal was developed by the government officials in close collaboration with IT professionals as well as civil society groups. So this portal was developed with close coordination between Department of Information Technology and then number of IT professionals and the civil society groups. Clear? So this portal is a close coordination between these three groups, and then the information related to the availability of, so what type of information is being displayed in this particular portal? Information related to availability of food grains, ration shops, and then implementation of schemes and their beneficiaries, land records, and then social security pensions, and then inter alia will be available on real-time basis on this platform. So as soon as these records are being updated, that updated information also will be provided in this particular portal. Okay. So these are the common information that gets accessed via RTA. So instead of receiving a particular letter and then giving out information, they are trying to actively disseminate information. By doing that, they are not only increasing both transparency as well as accountability of particular government departments, they are also saving a lot of time, not only for public but also for themselves, because there is no need to employ one person to disseminate information, right? Because all the information is already available to the public. Now, for this purpose, to access this information kiosks will be established in village panchayats, and self-service e-mitra centers in towns will be established to enable the people to access this particular information. Even though this particular information is being displayed in the public domain, people should have the means to access this information, right? Now that means will also be provided by Rajasthan government. Now that means will come in the form of information kiosk. Like for example, ATM is a form of kiosk where you get to put ATM card and then you are taking money. Similar to that, similar to ATM kiosk, information kiosk where by typing a query, people can get access to information. And information kiosk will be established in village panchayats, and then self-service e-mitra centers. It's kind of similar to internet cafes. They'll be established in towns. Clear? Now using these means public can access information very easily. Now let's move on to the next slide. Now the Department of Information Technology will serve as a nodal department for the development as well as operationalization and the maintenance of Jan Suchna portal. Yeah, Jan Suchna portal will be operationalized by Department of Information Technology. Now, under Jan Suchna portal, there will be two types of groups that will be established. One is advisory group, and the next one is grievance redressal offices. So, these are the two types of groups that will be established by Jan Suchna portal. Now, what is the job of advisory groups? The norms as well as for operationalizing JSP. JSP has to function correctly, right? Now, if they want to make this JSP function very smoothly and then correctly, they should lay some norms as well as standards. Okay? For smooth functioning of JSP, norms and standards should be prescribed. These norms as well as standards will be prescribed by advisory group in close consultation with civil society groups. Now, what is the purpose of grievance redressal officers? Now, these grievance redressal officers will be appointed by state government so that citizens can keep a check on accountability aspect of state government. Clear? So these grievance redressal officers, they will take complaints from people. So if that complaint says that this information is not being displayed in Jan Suchna portal, they will take up this complaint and they will act accordingly. Clear? Now, also importantly, this launch of this portal is in accordance with the true spirit of Right to Information Act and also ensures compliance with Section 4, Clause 2 of RTA Act that mandates public authorities to proactively disclose information in public domain. Okay. There is one, the majority of RTA deals with passive dissemination, that is, public has to write a letter and then public information officer will give that particular information. But there is an important provision in RTA Act called as Section 4, which was not implemented widely across India. Now, this Section 4 encourages number of government agencies as well as departments to actively disseminate information. Okay. So, the implementation of this Jan Suchna portal aims to enhance the provisions which are mentioned in Section 4 of RTA Act. Clear? Now, what is this Right to Information Act? Clear? Now, this RTA Act was enacted in 2005 with the aim to secure citizens' access to information which is under the control of public authorities. See, public authorities, as I mentioned before, will have a lot of access to information. Now, what is the job of public authorities? The job of public authorities is to serve for the welfare of the people. Now, the information that they have is for the welfare of the people. So they have to give this information. They have to be transparent with this information to the public, so that public can hold these public officials accountable to them. Okay? Now, if information is not accessible to them, public cannot effectively hold these government officials accountable. Now, I'll give you an example. Now, if you want to, if a particular contract has been awarded to construct a street road in your area, okay? This road was badly damaged because of rains. Now, recently, Taluka office sanctioned for construction of your street road. Clear? Now, if information is not being actively disseminated to the public, if information is not disclosed to the public, what can happen? This Taluka office can award contracts to dubious personalities by involving in corruption. Now, if corruption is there, what will happen? For construction of this road, a lot more money will be consumed compared to the construction of the road in honest manner. Okay, not only that, the amount spent, there can be a lot of things. Even though you should know whether the contract was awarded in a fair manner or not. All this information will be available with Taluka office authorities. Now, if before RTA there was no way to getting access to this information, but RTA made getting access to this information very easy. Okay? Now, if common man can get access to this particular information, holding Taluka office officials accountable becomes much easier. Now, the primary purpose behind this enactment was to promote transparency as well as accountability in the working of every public authority. Now, Section 4 of RTA Act requires suo motu declaration of information by each public authority. Now, what is the meaning of this particular word, suo motu? If you read newspapers regularly, you might have come across these words numerous times. Now, the meaning of this word suo motu involves on its own. The meaning of this word suo motu is on its own. For example, if you come across word sentence like Supreme Court sumo took this particular case. What does it mean? Is the Supreme Court, even without a receipt of formal petition from public, they can take this case upon themselves from their own authority. So even before, even without receiving a petition from public, they can take up this case. So what does this word summuta mean in the context of RTI? So even without receiving formal requisition letter from public concern, public authorities can actively disseminate information. So that's the meaning of summuta in the context of RTI. Now, earlier in 2019, an amendment was proposed to RTI Act that aimed to give central government the power to fix the tenure, salaries of central as well as state information commissioners, which are statutorily protected under RTI Act. Now, before, in original passing of RTI Act of 2005, Chief Information Commissioner as well as State Information Commissioner, these two authorities were provided with salary, defined salary, which was passed by the law of parliament, and then their terms of service was equivalent to that of either chief election commissioner for chief information commissioner, and then information commissioners is equivalent to that of election commissioners, and then their service conditions was also equivalent to the members of election commission. Now all these provisions was taken away from RTI Act. Right now, it's at the mercy of all these things: salary, terms of service, service conditions. All these are at the mercy of central government. Central government, they can change these provisions whenever they want. So now, what is the disadvantage of this particular move? Now, the proposed move may dilute the autonomy of information commissioners. Now, why do you think all these provisions are there? Now, all these provisions are there mainly to protect the autonomy of information commissioners. Now, information commissioners are under the influence of central government or under the whims of central government. What will they do? They will act only based on interests of central government. Now, to prevent from that happening, some autonomous powers was given to information commission. Those autonomous powers was taken away recently. Okay. Now that's it with regards to this particular topic. Now let's take a look at one question which is related to Jan Suchna portal. Now, with reference to Jan Suchna portal, consider the following statements. Union Ministry of Electronics as well as Information Technology is a nodal ministry for operationalization and maintenance of this portal. Now, look at this word here, Union Ministry. As I mentioned before, Jan Suchna portal was launched by Rajasthan government, not central government. So, Department of Information Technology under Rajasthan government is the body which is responsible for operationalizing this particular portal, not Union Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Now, so first statement is clearly wrong. Now let's take a look at second statement. The information available on this portal is available on real-time basis. Now, is this information correct? Yes, it is correct. As I mentioned before, the information available on this portal is updated real time. So as soon as any change is being made to the original information, that will be updated on Jan Suchna portal. So this particular statement is correct. So the answer for this particular question is B. Clear? I hope everything with regards to this particular topic was clear to you. So if you wish to, if you have any doubts with regards to this particular topic, ask in the comment section below, and I will try to answer. Now let's take a look at third topic of today, that is external benchmark rates. Now, what are these external benchmark rates? See, RBI, Reserve Bank of India, has made it mandatory for all banks to link their new floating rate loans, that is personal, retail as well as loans to micro, small, medium enterprises, to external benchmark with effect from 1st of October 2019. Clear? So, for example, what is repo rate? If this is RBI, if this is bank, okay, now this is individual A. Now banks will borrow money from RBI at an interest rate called as repo rate. Clear? Now if this repo rate is at 6%, 6 basis points, now banks will give out loans to person A at interest rate which is higher than repo rate. Say they will give out loans at higher rate, say for example 9%. Clear? Now, even though the percentage interest rate charged by banks, which is given to number of industries as well as persons, is linked to repo rate, so far these interest rates are not being linked with external benchmarks such as repo rate. Banks used a methodology called as marginal. We used a methodology called as marginal cost of lending rate. Now, using this methodology only, banks were fixing this interest rate. Clear? Now, to solve this problem, RBI has mandated banks to link this interest rate of loans to external benchmark rates such as repo rate, treasury bill yields, all these things. Clear? Now, this move is aimed at faster transmission of monetary policy rates. Okay. Now, even though repo rate was decreasing recently because of central government's expansionary fiscal policy, this decrease in repo rate is not being transmitted to common people. Okay, so even though our repo rate was being decreased from 7% to 6%, from 6% to 5%, this decrease in repo rate is not being translated to common man. Banks are reluctant to reduce their interest rate. But to solve this problem, this interest rate provided by bank are being asked by RBI to link with external benchmark rates. Now, banks right now can choose one of four external benchmarks, which includes repo rate, 3-month treasury bill yield, 6-month treasury bill yield, or any other benchmark rate published by Financial Benchmarks of India Private Limited. Clear? Now, at present, interest rates on loans are being linked to banks' marginal cost of fund-based interest rate known as marginal cost of lending rate. Those customers, even though MCLR was being in operational, if customers are willing to switch to repo linked rate, they can do so based on mutually acceptable terms. And even though MCLR before October 2018 was being in operational, customers, if they wish to switch over to repo rate linked loans, they can do so via mutually agreed terms. But crucially, even the banks can adopt the external benchmark rates for one particular type of loan. Adoption of multiple benchmarks by the same bank is not allowed within a particular loan category. Now, for example, SBI. Take an example of SBI. SBI gives number of loans such as agriculture loan, personal loans, infrastructure loans. All these types of loans are being given by SBI. Now, these different types of loans can be linked to different types of external benchmark rates. For example, agricultural loan can be linked to a repo rate. Personal loan can be linked to treasury bond yield. This industrial loan can be linked to any other external benchmark rate. But within this agricultural loan, then we will give to number of persons, right? For example, agricultural loan will be given to person A, it will be given to person B. It can be given to person C. Now we cannot adopt bank cannot adopt different external benchmark rates for these individual loans. So all these individual loans should be linked with only one external benchmark rate. Clear? Individual loans cannot be differentiated, but different types of loans can be linked to different types of external benchmark rates. Now, importantly, interest rate under external benchmark shall be reset at least once every 3 months. Clear? Now, what is the background? What is why this particular move was being mandated by RBI? Now, the transmission of policy rate changes to the lending rate of banks under the current MCLR framework has not yet been satisfactory. As I mentioned before, even though RBI was reducing repo rate, banks are not reluctant to pass on this decrease in repo rate to the customers. Now, to solve this problem only, RBI is currently mandating all banks to link their loans to external benchmark rates. Now, conversely, banks put a counter argument saying that under current MCLR formula, costs or interest rate is calculated based on cost of funds. So, the any decrease in repo rate can be passed on to the customers only gradually. It cannot just be passed on immediately. Okay. Since MCLR is based on cost of funds. Now, cost of funds it takes into account the revenue of a particular bank for the whole year, right? So any decreasing in repo rate can be transmitted to the public only gradually, because if repo rate is being decreased, this decreasing in repo rate will be reflected in the next year's balance sheet. So only next year we can transmit this decrease in repo rate. So to solve this problem only, government is currently mandating all the banks to link to an external benchmark rate. Now, what are all the crucial difference between marginal cost lending and the lending rate and the repo linked loan? Now, in case of marginal cost of lending rate, interest rate of loans is linked to banks' cost of funds. Whereas in case of repo linked loan, interest rate of banks are linked to RBI's lending rate, that is repo rate. Now it takes around 4 to 6 months to move after RBI rate cut. So if RBI is reducing repo rate by 50 basis points, that is 0.5 percentage, it will take around 4 to 6 months, sometimes even longer, to pass on this decreased interest rate to the consumer. Now, in case of repo linked loan, it responds immediately to RBI's rate cut. So, as soon as our repo rate is being decreased, it gets transmitted immediately. Now, RBI rate cuts are not fully passed on to the borrowers. Even though repo rate is being reduced by 50 basis points, all this reduced amount will not be passed on to the consumer. So instead of reducing interest rate by 50 basis points, banks will reduce only 50 basis points. So 25 basis points. Clear? Rate cuts are passed on automatically. Now this particular MCLR resets annually for most banks. So it is changed only annually. But in case of repo rate linked loan, it is reset every 3 months. Okay. Now changes usually takes place by the tune of 5 to 10 basis points. Now in case of repo linked loan, changes usually takes place in the tune of 25 basis points or more. Now MCLR is revised every month, and in case of repo linked loan, it is revised bi-monthly. So every 2 times in a month, it will be revised. Now this MCLR is very low volatile, because interest rates is not being changed drastically year on year. So that's why it is very less volatile. But in case of repo rate linked loan, it is changed every month, right? So it is highly volatile compared to MCLR linked interest rates. Now, what is the difference between fixed as well as floating interest rate? See, in case of fixed interest rate, it means that repayment of loans in fixed as well as equal installments over an entire period of loan. Now, what does it mean? For example, there is person A. He is borrowing some personal loan from a bank. He is borrowing a personal loan from a particular bank for around 10 years at an interest rate of 8 percentage. Clear? Now, if this person A is borrowing under fixed interest rate loan, now this interest rate will remain the same throughout the period of 10 years. Okay? This interest rate of 8 percentage will remain the same throughout the period of 10 years. But in case of floating interest rate, this 8 percentage interest rate will change depending on the prevailing external benchmark rate. Yeah. So, for example, for 1 month it will be 8 percentage. Next month, based on the prevailing repo rate, it can change to 9 percentage, or even it can change to 7 percentage. Yeah. So that's the gist of. That's the basic difference between fixed as well as floating interest rate. Now, in case of floating interest rate, the rate of interest varies with market conditions. The drawback with floating interest rate is that the uneven nature of monthly installments. So, for example, in case of fixed rate interest rate, if you are paying 8,000 rupees for loan repayments, you'll be paying this 8,000 rupees constantly for the rest of 10 years. But in case of floating interest rate, 1 month you'll be paying around 8,000 rupees. Next month you can pay around 8,500 or 7,500, depending on interest rates. Clear? Now, what is this marginal cost of lending rate? How is this marginal cost of lending rate is calculated? Now, this marginal cost of lending rate is the minimum interest rate below which a bank is not permitted to lend through RBI. So, bank is not permitted to lend, though RBI can give authorization for some exceptional cases. Okay? So, for example, if MCLR is 8 percentage for a particular bank, banks cannot give interest rate below this 8 percentage, below the MCLR interest rate of 8 percentage. Now, if they want to give below this interest rate of 8%, they have to get approval from RBI. RBI can do so only in exceptional circumstances. Now, MCLR is calculated based on number of factors such as fixed deposit rates, source of funds, and then savings rate of a particular bank. So, based on this criteria, MCLR for each individual bank will be calculated by banks themselves. Clear? Now, I hope every information part in this particular topic was clear to you. Let's take a look at questions regarding this particular topic. Let's take a look at first statement. First statement says that recently the RBI of India has made it mandatory for all banks to release all personal retail loans to external benchmark. Yes, this particular statement is correct. That's the gist of this particular topic. At present, interest rates on loans are linked to banks' cost of fund based interest rate known as MCLR. Is this statement correct? Yes, it is correct. So the answer for this particular question will be C, both 1 and 2. Okay. Now let's move on to the next topic of today. Our next topic concerns with Steering Committee on Financial Technology. Now, the Steering Committee on Financial Technology has submitted its final report to the Ministry of Finance on September of 2019. Now, the committee was constituted in pursuance of the announcement made in budget speech of 2018-19 period. So, based on this budget speech, Steering Committee on Financial Technology was appointed. Now, this steering committee has given its recommendation to Ministry of Finance. Now, what is this financial technology? Now, this financial technology describes an emerging financial services sector in 21st century. It includes any technological innovation in financial sector, including innovations in financial literacy and education, retail banking, as well as investment, and even cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin. So, any financial solution which involves technology can be clubbed under financial technology. So, with this particular sector, a steering committee was established. This steering committee has given its recommendation. Now, why is this particular topic very important? See, these recommendations of this financial technology is very important from the mains point of view. There can be questions regarding in what ways we can develop our financial technology industry in financial sector. This question can be asked. Now, if UPSC is asking this type of question, we can use information from this particular report and then use it in your mains answer writing. Okay. Now, what are the recommendations given by this particular report? The first recommendation given by this particular report is financial inclusion of micro, small, medium enterprises. Now, the financial tech firms have the potential to meet the financial needs of startup, small scale manufacturing enterprises. The Reserve Bank of India may consider the development of cash flow based financing for MSMEs. Yeah. For establishment of small scale manufacturing enterprises, this so for establishment of this SMEs, they require some access to credit, right? Right now, they are getting credit only from institutional banks, scheduled banks. Now, since they are getting only from scheduled banks, access to credit from these banks is very difficult. So, RBI has to explore the possibility of using financial technology sector for disseminating loans to small scale manufacturing enterprises. And also, a legal framework for the consumer protection should also be put in place, keeping in mind the rise of fintech and digital services. So, because of rise in digital services like Paytm, Google Pay, consumer protection is very important, and information regarding consumers is also very important. Now, to preserve this information regarding consumers, a legal framework for consumer protection should be put in place by the central government. Okay. Now, also for efficient delivery of insurance products, insurance companies and lending agencies should be encouraged to use drones as well as remote sensing technology via satellites directly or using services of fintech companies for crop area damage as well as location assessments. Okay, I'll give you an example. Now, this person, they assume there's a person A. This person A is a farmer. Now, yes, this person A has obtained farm insurance from an insurance company. He has obtained farm insurance from an insurance company. Now, after he has obtained this farm insurance, he almost all his farmlands have been destroyed because of droughts. Clear. Now, if all his farmlands are being destroyed, what will this information? What should this information insurance company should do? They should settle their insurance claim of person A. Now, to settle this insurance claim, first they have to verify whether this farmland has been destroyed or not. Now, to verify this particular claim, this insurance company should be encouraged to use technologies such as drones. Now, what is the use of drones? So, rather than sending out a person, if a person is, if insurance company is sending out a person, this person will ask for, this person can ask for money from particular farmer. So, there is a problem of corruption. Clear? And they can make some mistakes. They can fall to nepotism. So, all these problems are there. So, instead of rather than sending a person, if insurance companies are using drones to assess the crop damage, all these problems of corruption, nepotism can be solved. Clear? And also for developing standards, it recommended adoption of regulation technology and supervisory technology by all financial sector regulators. Clear? Now, to regulate this financial technology industry, we should develop some standards, right? Now, to develop these standards, this committee is recommending the adoption of one regulation technology and then supervisory technology. Now, what is this regulatory technology and supervisory technology? Now, this regulation technology is the use of new technology to address the increasingly data dense landscape required to meet regulatory compliance challenges. See, we are living in a data driven world. Okay. So, any regulatory authority like RBI, CBI, they have access to huge amounts of information. Now, all these huge amounts of information has to be processed by this RBI. Now, to process this amount of information, there should be some standards in place. Those standards will be given by regulation technology. Yeah. Now, what is the purpose of this supervisory technology? This supervisory technology is the use of innovative technology by which supervisory agencies are aided with support of supervision. Supervisory agencies like RBI, SCBI, they supervise number of individual financial industries. Clear? Now, to aid these supervisory functions, a supervisory technology will be used so that this function of supervision becomes much easier. Clear? Now, what are the other recommendations given by this particular steering committee? The next one is eliminating discrimination. Right now, RBI treats in non-bank financial companies and scheduled commercial banks differently. It treats NBFC and scheduled commercial bank differently. Because of that, the amount of leeway provided to NBFC is very less. So profits of NBFC is very less compared to scheduled commercial banks. So this discriminatory practices between these two companies should be avoided by RBI so that the NBFCs can thrive in Indian financial sector. Also, for public sector enterprises, the committee recommends the use of fintech, especially by public sector enterprises as well as financial services company, to bolster cyber security as well as fraud control and anti-money laundering practices. So, as number of digital services are being increased, threats like cyber security, digital frauds will become an increased phenomenon. Now, to solve this problem, all public sector enterprises should be encouraged to deploy financial technology. Clear? And then recommendation regarding virtual banking system. Now, Department of Financial Services and the Reserve Bank of India may examine the suitability of virtual banking system in the context of India. Now, what is this virtual banking system? Now, what is the job of bank? The job of bank is to take deposits and then give out loans, right? The job of bank is to take deposits and then give out loans. Now, to do this function, banks right now are establishing physical banks at various locations. The banks will establish a number of branches like Koramangala branch. All these different branches in individual locations will be established. Okay. So, in case of virtual banking system, rather than establishing a physical location bank, all the banking transaction, both deposits as well as giving out loans, will be taken via online medium. Okay? So instead of establishing a physical bank, all the transaction done by a conventional bank will be done will be done virtually. Clear? And also the usage of common fintech platforms for Mudra scheme, small saving schemes, as well as pension schemes and provident fund schemes should be explored. Okay. And lastly, we have to reform the current peer-to-peer lending platforms based on financial technology standards. Clear? Now, what is this peer-to-peer platform? Now, what is the job of bank? As I mentioned before, banks, they take deposits from customers at say 5%, and they will lend this amount to person A at a higher interest rate, say 10%. This difference of interest rate of 5 to 10% is profit for the bank. This difference of interest rate between 10% and 5% is a profit for bank. So bank in a way is acting as an intermediary between person D and A. So in case of peer-to-peer lending, this intermediary is completely removed. So this person A can directly borrow from person D. So person D can lend at a higher interest rate, and then person A also can get access to loans at a less interest rate. Clear? So that's the advantage of peer-to-peer lending platform. So right now we have to reform the current peer-to-peer lending platform based on fintech. Clear? Now let's move on to the next topic of today. Now the next topic deals with United Nations Convention on Combat Desertification or Conference of Parties 14th conference. Now, recently, the 14th edition of Conference of Party to United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification ended on 13th of September 2019. Now, this particular Conference of Party was held in Greater Noida and it was the first time that India hosted an edition of UNCCP Conference of Parties. Okay, now the theme of this particular conference was Restore Land and then Sustain Future. Okay. Now, India, being the global host of Conference of Parties 14, has taken over this presidency from China for the next 2 years till the year of 2021. Okay. Now, after the conduction of this COP14, India became among the select few countries to have hosted all three types of conference of parties that have come out of Rio Conference of 1992. So, Rio Conference of 1992 established three types of convention. One is Convention on Biological Diversity. Next one is United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change (UNFCCC), and the next one is United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification. So these are the three types of conventions which was established by Rio Convention in 1992. So India is among the very few countries who have hosted all these three types of COPs. Now, this information is very important from the perspective of prelims because international organizations, every year in prelims, UPSC asks around 5 to 6 questions on international organizations. Since this UNCCD COP took place in India, there is a higher chance that this particular question will be asked in the upcoming prelims examination. Not only that, this unique information regarding this particular COP also will be importantly asked in UPSC prelims. So this information is very important from the perspective of prelims. Now, what is desertification? Now, desertification is a degradation of land in arid, semi-arid as well as dry subhumid areas. It is caused primarily by human activities and climate variations. Clear? Now, when I talk about desertification, people will wrongly associate desertification with expansion of current deserts. Now, that's clearly wrong. Desertification means conversion of existing dryland ecosystem to completely wastelands where nothing grows. Clear? So that's the second point. Desertification does not refer to expansion of existing deserts. It occurs because dryland ecosystems, which cover almost one-third of world's land area, are extremely vulnerable to overexploitation or inappropriate land use. Now, World Day to Combat Desertification as well as drought is observed every year on the date of 17th of June to promote public awareness of international efforts to combat desertification. Clear? Now, to combat desertification, bond challenge was devised by UNCCD. Now, what is this bond challenge? Now, this bond challenge is a global effort to bring about 50 million hectares of world's deforested and as well as degraded forest land into restoration by 2020 and additional of 350 million hectares by 2030. Yeah, at the UNFCCC conference of parties in which was conducted in Paris of 2015, India also joined voluntary bond convention and has pledged itself to restore 13 million hectares of degraded land and deforested land by the year of 2020 and additional 8 million hectares by 2030. Okay. Now that's it with regards to this topic. Now let's take a look at one question regarding this particular topic. Now, look at first statement. First statement says that India hosted a recent conference of parties to UNCCD. Is this statement correct? Yes, this statement is correct. This conference of parties was hosted on September of 2019. Now, let's take a look at second statement. The UNCCD, along with CBD as well as UNFCCC, are the outcome of 1992 Rio Earth Summit. As I mentioned, I stressed my point earlier. This unique information is very important. Not only this, India is among the very few countries who have hosted all these three types of conference of parties. Okay. Now look at third statement. Goal 15 of Sustainable Development Goals deals with the issue of desertification. This statement is also correct. So the answer for this particular question is D, 1, 2 and 3. Okay. Now that's it with regards to this particular topic. If you have any doubts regarding this particular topic, you can ask in the comment sections below and I'll try to answer those questions. Now let's move on to the last topic of today, Mukurti National Park. So whenever you are studying a national park, there are three important information that you have to keep in mind. There are three important information that you have to keep in mind. One is location of this particular national park, and the next one is vegetation of this particular national park, and the last one is unique flora as well as fauna of a particular national park. So these are the three information which is very important when you are studying a particular national park. Okay. Now in case of location of Mukurti National Park, Mukurti National Park is located on the northwesternmost tip of Tamil Nadu. So it is located adjacent to number of national parks such as Mudumalai Wildlife Sanctuary as well as Silent Valley National Park. That's the location of Mukurti National Park. Now, what is the vegetation? See, the park is characterized by montane grasslands as well as shrublands interspread with sholas in a high altitude area of high rainfall and near freezing temperatures with high amount of winds. So this is the vegetation of Mukurti National Park. And what is the important species in Mukurti National Park? This particular park was created to protect its keystone species called as Nilgiri Tar. So important fauna in Mukurti National Park is Nilgiri Tar. Also, it is home of an array of endangered wildlife, which includes Royal Bengal tiger, Asian elephant, but its main mammal attraction is Nilgiri Tar. The park was previously known as Nilgiri Tar National Park, but it was named into Mukurti National Park. Now, this particular national park is a part of Nilgiri Biosphere along with Mudumalai Wildlife Sanctuary, Bandipur National Park, Nagarpur National Park, as well as Wayanad Wildlife Sanctuary and Silent Valley. Now, if you look at all these reserve forests, these are located very near to Mukurti National Park. If you look at the Bandipur National Park, it is located in this particular area. Nagarpur is located here, Silent Valley is located here, and then Mudumalai is located here, Wayanadu is located here, and then Indira Gandhi Wildlife Sanctuary is located here. So all these forest areas, unique forest areas, are located very close to each other. Okay. So knowing spatial areas between these two, between all these national parks is very essential. You should know which national park is the northernmost, which national park is the southernmost, which is the easternmost, and which one is the westernmost. All this information you have to study. Clear? Now that's it with regards to today's topics. Now if you have any doubts regarding today's topics, you can ask in the comment section. And I'll try to ask each and every doubts asked by you. Not only that, if you have any doubts regarding your preparation schedule or current affairs topics or polity topics, you can ask in the comment section and I'll try to answer as much as possible. Now thank you. Have a safe and warm day. Now don't forget to subscribe to Unacademy's YouTube channel, and if you wish to follow these videos regularly, click on notification bell icon in Unacademy subscription button. That's it. That's it. And don't forget to use my code Aravind V if you wish to subscribe to Unacademy subscription platform. Okay. Now, thank you. Stay safe and stay healthy.